Off. As Kaito and Mikasa sauntered back to the inner gate, they stumbled upon a spectacle that couldn't have been more typical of the chaos that surrounded them. A large crowd of citizens, close to breaking into a full-fledged panic, encircled a pudgy man who was putting his best belittling skills to work on two other unfortunate souls. The epic showdown. Trying to move a wagon that appeared to be on a date with the wall. Shut up, you worthless bums. This goods here is worth more than you, the corpulent gentleman declared, acting as if he had an actual clue about what he was talking about. To be fair, there was a wagon. It was stuck. That was about as much as anyone could confirm. Our fearless duo, Mikasa and Kaito, approached the scene. Mikasa, of course, was ready to deliver a passionate speech and sort things out. But just when she was about to utter the first word, Kaito strolled past her as if he had more pressing issues on his agenda. He approached the stout guy, who began to stutter, "Hey, you." Before realizing he was in for a close encounter of the neck-grabbing kind. In an instant, Kaito's fingers were clamped around the man's windpipe. A moment later, he was suspended in the air and wheezing like a faulty accordion. "Now," Kaito said, the embodiment of tranquil intensity, "how about you reconsider your approach, friend?" The crowd, caught in the crossfire of the confrontation, could hardly believe their eyes. They went from collective gasp to confused applause in a heartbeat. They needed a hero, and Kaito had unknowingly taken on the role. The stout man, his face turning as red as a tomato in a pressure cooker, nodded frantically, signifying his newfound dedication to not being a total jerk. Kaito, ever so casually, let go of the man, who hit the ground like a sack of potatoes. He cast a glance that could only be described as superhero-esque at the onlookers. "That's more like it," he announced with a smug grin. "Now, how about lending a hand to these fine folks instead of terrorizing them?" It was official. Amid the Titan crisis, Kaito had now added, crowd pleaser, to his resume. And just then, as it happened in canon, a massive 15-meter Titan, probably attracted by the prospect of a snack, made its grand entrance. The ground quaked, and panic swept through the crowd like wildfire. People sprinted for the safety of the open gate, a real-life version of a "who can squeeze through first" game. Well, isn't that a sight? Kaito mused, enjoying the show. Mikasa didn't reply, her eyes looking in the direction of Titan. Then, a question popped from his mouth like a casual remark, "Wanna take it?" Mikasa, usually as emotionally expressive as a brick wall, replied in her usual stoic tone as she watched the rushing Titan, ready to spring into action. "Why, you scared?" Now, that caught Kaito off guard. Mikasa, the emotionless brick herself, had just dished out a sassy comeback. Progress was being made, folks. "How can I let the lady do such a gruesome task?" Kaito replied, his voice laced with faux chivalry. "I was just asking, lest you say I do everything myself." Mikasa couldn't help but snort at his theatrics, though the truth was she did want to see Kaito in action. Despite his incessant flirting and laid-back attitude, she'd never seen him go all out during their past 2 years of training. His strength had always been something of a mystery to everyone. "Getting fast, aren't we?" Kaito quipped as he deftly sidestepped the oncoming Titan's hand. He made it look like a walk in the park, even taking a moment to use a wall as a stepping stone to vault toward the Titan's legs. "Damn, what a neat wall jump," he muttered. What was impressive was that he hadn't used his ODM gear to do this. It was all about testing the boundaries of his newly enhanced body. The moment his feet hit the wall, it cracked under the sheer pressure he exerted. And then came the moment of reckoning. The Titan, probably thinking it had a smart move in mind, tried to give Kaito the boot. It aimed to kick him away. But, alas for the Titan, Kaito's momentum was something else entirely. With the might of a battering ram, Kaito's head met the Titan's knee in a decidedly painful headbutt. The result? The Titan stumbled backward, temporarily dazed. "Ouch, that hurt," Kaito winced, rubbing his head as his feet touched the ground. A moment later, the Titan had rebalanced itself. Again, as the Titan closed in, its massive form towering over Kaito, he couldn't help but smirk. "Time to have some fun," he whispered happily. The Titan's massive hand descended toward him, and Kaito sidestepped it with ease, his movements graceful and precise. "Let's see how much force I can handle," he said with a grin, and he delivered a powerful kick to the Titan's ankle, testing the strength of his legs. Too bad the Titan also had the same idea. The Titan staggered but didn't fall, and Kaito was thrown backward, crashing into a nearby building. Not bad, he mumbled as he pushed himself up, his body still intact despite the impact. The Titan roared, and Kaito lunged at it, aiming to test the strength of his blades. His blades sliced through the Titan's flesh like a hot knife through butter, and Kaito couldn't help but chuckle. These are definitely an upgrade, he said with satisfaction. He darted around the Titan, his ODM gear whirring as he moved effortlessly through the air. Let's see if I can cut its Achilles tendons, he mused, and with a swift maneuver, he sliced through the tendons in the Titan's heels, causing it to stumble and fall to one knee. Kaito landed gracefully and observed the fallen Titan. Well, that's one way to take them down, he remarked, clearly pleased with the results of his experiments. The Titan roared in pain and frustration as it struggled to rise, its movements hampered by its severed tendons. Kaito couldn't help but taunt it. Getting back up, huh? You've got some fight in you. He darted back in, evading the Titan's futile attempts to swat him away. With precision and finesse, he sliced through the tendons in its arms and shoulders, rendering them useless. It's like carving a turkey for Thanksgiving, he quipped as he moved with practiced ease. The Titan's thrashing became more desperate as it realized its helplessness. Kaito leapt up and delivered a powerful kick to its back, sending the giant crashing to the ground with a resounding thud. As the dust settled and the Titan lay defeated, Kaito couldn't help but grin. Well, that was an interesting experiment. Time to wrap things up, he said, positioning himself for the final blow. With a swift and decisive strike, Kaito drove his blade into the Titan's nape, ending its torment and silencing its roars. The creature shuddered, and then its body started evaporating off. As he withdrew his blade and toward Mikasa, he couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Not bad for a day's work, huh? Mikasa pawed. As Mikasa watched Kaito draw near the Titan, her curiosity piqued. She had spent the last 2 years training and fighting alongside him, but today felt different. She never seen him in a real battle, and his relaxed demeanor and banter, even in the face of a 15-meter Titan, surprised her. Her sharp eyes caught the sudden burst of speed in the Titan's movements. That's the second time that happened. This wasn't a mere coincidence. Something about Kaito's presence seemed to affect the Titans, and it puzzled her. When Kaito executed a headbutt to the Titan's knee, her shock deepened. Did he just push it back? The 15-meter tall creature, weighing possibly in tons, staggered back. Her mind raced with questions. How was Kaito capable of such feats? It was as if he had the strength and agility of a Titan himself. She observed him, massaging his head in mild pain, and for a moment, her disbelief crept in. Could Kaito be more than just a skilled cadet? Her heart began to race, and her instincts urged her to uncover the truth. But the thought of protecting Eren overshadowed that. Still, she continued to watch Kaito butcher the Titan. It was absurd how he moved, effortlessly cutting the Titan's tendons, rendering it immobile. His refusal to employ the ODM gear seemed like a deliberate show of his skills. And that did work, she had never seen anything like it. Her own battle-hardened mind was in turmoil, trying to process what she was witnessing. Leaving everything else about that flirty bastard aside, his combat skills were worthy of admiration at least. A quick glance at the people who were still rooted in awe and admiration for Kaito's performance reminded her of the urgency of the situation. Her focus had to return to her mission, finding Eren and ensuring his safety. As her inner thoughts churned, she pushed aside her amazement and directed her resolve toward her unrelenting goal. Fall back. There could be more Titans in the area. Hearing her voice, the citizens came out of their reverie and realized the situation. They quickly escaped through the door. She heard Kaito's voice, not bad for a day's work, huh? Mikasa regarded him with a rare smile. Indeed. Your strength and skill are unexpected. Sorry for the late chapter, guys. Had a quiz at college today, it left me quite exhausted in evening. Hence I wasn't able to edit the chapter in time. I am getting quite a low response from you guys. Do comment and review here if you can. NightSpectra_tot creators thoughts. 2 comments 0 vote. Dire fate. After that brief compliment, Mikasa turned her head toward the last of the fleeing citizens. We should check up on the other squads. They might need our help. Mikasa voiced her concern. Kaito gave a nod, knowing all too well that her primary concern was Eren, even if she didn't say it aloud. Of course, but let's not keep them waiting. Just as they were about to spring into action, a person descended from above the walls. It was Captain Ian of the Garrison Regiment, a man in his early 30s with a respectable level of strength. Captain Ian gazed at Kaito with evident surprise, his eyes wide in awe at the remarkable performance he had just witnessed. That was amazing. Which world did you come from? Kaito replied with a tinge of melancholy, one with anime, video games, and hentai. Captain Ian was thoroughly baffled by the response. Anime, video games, and hentai. Were these some sort of newfangled battle techniques? Before he could delve any further into this strange conversation, Mikasa made a firm request to the captain, which sounded more like a declaration. Captain, I would like to assist the vanguard squads with their retreat. Without waiting for his response, Mikasa shot into the air, her ODM gear propelling her, leaving Captain Ian with his mouth half open in bewilderment. Patting his shoulders, Kaito couldn't resist a parting comment as he launched into the sky. Have fun, Captain. As Kaito followed suit, his gaze lingering on her bulbous ass for a moment, his mind replaying the earlier battle. It had been a spur-of-the-moment decision, the elaborate show he had put on. He could have easily dispatched the Titan with one swift move. However, he couldn't resist showing off some of his skills to Mikasa and, well, the small group of citizens who had been left in awe and that Ian guy, too. But then again, it wasn't likely anyone would question his abilities, much like how no one seemed to question Levi's superhuman reflexes in the whole 4 seasons of anime. He was just an ordinary, perfectly human-looking guy. And if someone else does, it's not like a person or two can't go missing in the grand scheme of things. With a hint of mischief in his thoughts, he followed Mikasa. As Kaito and Mikasa ventured deeper into the heart of the city, the true extent of the Titan's devastation became starkly evident. Unlike the relatively calm and isolated scenes near the city's edges, where a rare Titan or two wandered aimlessly, this part of Trost had been transformed into a nightmarish landscape. Titans roamed every street, feasting on the unfortunate souls who had crossed their paths, whether they were still breathing or had already met their grisly end. Streets were stained crimson with blood, and the air was heavy with a sickening metallic scent. While Kaito maintained his stoic facade, his vampiric nature allowing him to distance himself from the horrors before him, Mikasa was not as unaffected. Her normally unwavering composure wavered ever so slightly as she bore witness to the horrifying tableau that had unfolded before her. Even with her strong heart, this was her first time experiencing such an unrelenting nightmare. Shiganshina had been a different sort of chaos, where they had been carried away from the brewing carnage, but here, in Trost, they were thrust into the thick of the brutality. Kaito's keen perception picked up on the faint tremors in her eyes, a manifestation of the shock and revulsion she was battling to keep at bay. There was no need for words between them. Kaito understood the gravity of the situation, and he was there to provide support without the need for spoken reassurances. Their journey through the city eventually led them to a rooftop where a group of former cadets had taken refuge. The scene was one of a fragmented assembly, with many familiar faces present but a noticeable absence of others. Eren being one of the latter. The air was thick with unease, and a lingering sense of dread hung over the group, hinting at the magnitude of the challenges they would soon face. Kaito approached Connie, who was sitting on the roof's edge with a gloomy atmosphere. Connie, why's everyone gathered here? I've got a hunch, but tell me anyway. Connie's voice quivered as he responded, it's bad, Kaito. Real bad. Our gas reserves for the ODM gear are almost empty. We're in no shape to scale those gigantic walls, and the garrison HQ is surrounded by Titans. There's no way we can refill our gas tanks. Amid the fearful crowd, Kaito couldn't help but inject a touch of dark humor into the grim atmosphere. Such a bad situation, I hope Titans don't chew us alive, he said with a mirthful tone. But the faces of those around him, filled with terror and despair, only emphasized the gravity of their situation. It was painfully clear that the absent members of their group had likely met a gruesome fate on the battlefield. The expressions etched on the survivors' faces told a tale of terrible encounters and the horrifying end that had befallen their comrades. The mental images were vivid, of their dear friends being torn apart and devoured by the merciless Titan. Mikasa's eyes searched anxiously for the familiar faces of her friends. Her heart pounded, and her gaze locked onto a battered and shaken figure leaning against a chimney wall. Her voice quivered as she called out. Armin. Armin's face bore a blank expression, his eyes devoid of emotion, two silent teardrops tracing a mournful path down his cheeks. Currently Armin's mind was a turbulent sea of self-condemnation. He felt like a dead weight, an anchor holding back the progress of his friends. He replayed the painful events in his head, each a heavy burden that weighed on his conscience. He should have been faster, braver, more attentive, all those ifs haunted him. He had cost his friend's life, not just through inaction but as an active participant in their grim fate. As his thoughts churned, vivid scenes of horror from Trost played before his mind's eye. The blood-soaked streets, the agonizing sight of Hannah desperately attempting CPR on the half-eaten Franz. Eren selflessly threw him out of the Titan's maw, their final eye contact as the Titan devoured his savior. Armin had come to a grim understanding. This world was nothing but a living nightmare. It was an existence where tragedy seemed to follow him like a relentless shadow. First, the loss of his parents, then his grandfather, and now, the heart-wrenching absence of Eren. Armin. Armin. A voice from the world outside his thoughts pulled him back to the harsh reality he was trapped in. Upon hearing the voice, Armin knew it was Mikasa. Mikasa, he whispered under his breath. His heart was once again burdened by guilt. Armin understood just how much Mikasa cherished Eren, far beyond the bounds of mere friendship, closer than a sibling. And now, how could he ever face her? How could he admit that he had caused Eren's death? He should have perished alongside Eren. Oblivious to the turmoil within Armin, Mikasa let out a sigh of relief. Armin, are you hurt? Are you feeling okay? She inquired, her voice filled with concern. Armin couldn't muster a response, his thoughts still in disarray. Where is Eren? She asked, her worry increasing as she noticed his absence. Armin remained silent, his mind a tangled mess of emotions. Armin. Mikasa repeated, growing more anxious. Finally, Armin looked up at Mikasa, tears streaming down his face. Mikasa desperately tried to suppress the unsettling notion that had crept into her mind, but her hopes were cruelly dashed as Armin began to speak. Our unit. The 34th Cadet Unit. Thomas Wagner, Nick Tius, Milius Zaramusky, Mina Carolina, Eren Yeager. His voice grew stronger as he pronounced the names. All of them have fulfilled their duty and died a heroic death in battle. He practically screamed the last line, or so it seemed to Kaito, who was silently observing the heart-wrenching scene. Attempting to blend in, Kaito emulated the expressions of the others, trying to match the solemn atmosphere. Inwardly, he couldn't help but wonder why Armin's words mirrored those of the original storyline so closely. It was as if something, or someone, was compelling events to follow a preordained path. After all, even the slightest changes could drastically reshape the course of the future. As for the cadets who lost their lives, Kaito had known them, but he didn't have much emotion for people he had only met after arriving here. It was likely tied to his vampire nature, which often came across as cold and detached, especially towards those with whom he didn't share a deep connection or found hot. And, for the record, Mina hadn't been someone he found particularly attractive. The crowd's murmurs intensified upon learning the fate of the 34th Cadet Unit. An air of anxiety and fear began to grip the onlookers, filling the atmosphere with trepidation. I'm sorry, Mikasa, Armin began, his voice heavy with sorrow. Eren died in my stead. I couldn't do anything. Armin. Before he could finish, Mikasa cut him off. Her voice remained resolute, her face betraying no emotion. Kaito, however, couldn't overlook the surge in her heart rate, which briefly spiked before rapidly falling to a pace that suggested she had entered a trance-like state. This isn't time to be emotional, Mikasa declared, her tone devoid of feeling. Stand up. Her voice signified that what she said wasn't a request. Hello lads, what's up? Sorry for not uploading any chapters in the last 5 days. My schedule is a bit tight-packed due to upcoming end semester exams. I will release 2 chapters today to make up for that. The second one will be released later tonight. And also, the update rate will be 1 chap per 2 to 3 days for now. Like it. Add to library. Have some idea about my story? Comment it and let me know. NightSpectra _ tot creators thoughts. 2 comments 0 vote. Broken heart. Amid the grim aftermath of the battle, Kaito sought out Sasha, relieved to see her unharmed. He knew she was tough and had a good chance of surviving, but he couldn't help but worry about her safety. As he approached her, she seemed lost in her thoughts, gazing at the scattered Titan bodies in the vicinity. Hey! Kaito called out to her. Sasha turned to him, her expression a mix of surprise and sorrow. Kaito, she stammered, her voice trembling. While she wasn't in tears like some of the others, her fear and grief were evident, and her body trembled. Before he could finish his sentence, Sasha threw herself at him, clinging tightly, her embrace so fierce that even a Titan might find it hard to breathe. The scent of blood clung to her, but beneath it, he caught the faint aroma of something fruity in her hair. Kaito felt a twinge of guilt for leaving this food-loving girl alone earlier. He raised his arms and hugged her back, gently rubbing her back to comfort her. There, you're safe now, he whispered soothingly. The dam of emotions burst, and Sasha started crying. Kaito, Lisa, she. It ate her, she managed to say amidst her sobs, her words tangled in her distress. Kaito knew there was nothing he could say to make it better, so he simply offered his chest as a comforting shoulder, continuing to hold her. After a while, her cries quieted, and Kaito gently pulled back. Feeling better, potato head? He asked, gently lifting her chin to meet her teary but now calmer gaze. So Mo. He found her vulnerability utterly endearing but pushed away any inappropriate thoughts. Why yeah. Thank you, Sasha replied, rubbing her eyes and distancing herself from his chest. Her composure was still shaky, but she seemed more manageable. Kaito cupped her cheeks with one hand and spoke in a soothing tone, "You're safe now, don't worry." He couldn't help but notice her cheeks reddening at his touch. She nodded in response. They looked at Mikasa, who, after helping Armin to his feet, was outlining their primary objective for survival. They urgently needed to resupply their gas from the garrison HQ, given that their remaining supply dwindled rapidly after their confrontations with the Titans. She delivered her words with a conviction that left no room for doubt, stating how she embodied strength and how others appeared as spineless cowards resigned to their fate. One of the cadets couldn't help but voice the stark reality they faced. There's no way you can fight through all those Titans surrounding the HQ. Mikasa's response was unwavering. If I can't, then I'll die trying. But if I win, I live. Unless I fight, I cannot win. A sound logic indeed. Yet to Kaito, her declaration didn't reflect a desire to survive but rather an attempt to inspire others. He sensed that, beneath her encouraging words, Mikasa's own will to live had been extinguished. After her statement, she leapt from the rooftop, her ODM gear carrying her toward a Titan. Was the point of that to shock us into action? It's all your fault, Eren, Jean's mumbling came to Kaito's ears. As if filled with newfound strength, Jean drew his blade and looked at the gathered cadets. Were we trained to let our comrade fight alone? At this rate, we're going to turn out to be spineless cowards. Hey, Jean, Kaito called out, diverting Jean's attention, move through the Rolls Street. There are fewer Titans there. Jean, surprised by Kaito's advice, glanced at him for a moment. Despite their past clashes, he couldn't deny Kaito's skills. He nodded and replied, thanks for the heads up. With that, he activated his ODM gear and propelled himself into the air. Encouraged by Jean's leadership, the other cadets also began to move. He looked in the direction of Krista, who was standing beside Ymir. Their eyes met, and Kaito gave her a charming smile. Seeing that, a small smile also appeared on her face. He mouthed, "Stay safe," to which she mouthed, "You too." Ouch. He felt a playful pinch on his waist and turned to see Sasha. She seemed a bit flustered, her cheeks puffed up. He ruffled her hair in response, which made her cheeks deflate slightly. He turned to Sasha, "Sass, go with Krista and Ymir, I will join you in some time." "Where are you going?" she asked, a bit confused. Shouldn't he also join others to reach HQ, she thought. Kaito's tone was confident as he assured her, "I'll only need about 10 minutes. Don't worry. I'll meet you and the others and dice up those ugly-ass Titans in no time." Sasha, prompted by his unwavering confidence, nodded and smiled. "Take care, Dumbo." As Sasha and others left, Kaito sighed as he watched Mikasa's seemingly suicidal charge toward the Titans. He couldn't help but murmur to himself, "This makes me feel like scum, but this is a golden opportunity, isn't it?" However, his remark didn't go unnoticed. Marco, who had lingered behind, seemed perplexed. "Scum. Opportunity. What are you talking about, Kaito?" Kaito was surprised that someone had overheard him, and he burst into manic laughter when he realized the identity of the speaker. "You're quite the attentive listener, aren't you? It's like you were born to hear things you shouldn't." This encounter with Marco and the dialogue felt eerily familiar to Kaito, triggering a sense of déjà vu. Wait, is it déjà vu if it's about to happen? He wondered. Amid Marco's utter confusion, Kaito said teasingly. "Looks like you've earned this, haven't you?" After a brief moment of reflection, he continued, "Follow Jean closely or Connie if you can. I'm going to keep an eye on Mikasa lest she gets herself killed." With those words, Kaito leapt off the roof, leaving Marco with a parting reminder, "Don't wander off, kiddo." "I am not a kid fucker." Kaito was long gone to hear his reply. Shaking his head at Kato's peculiar behavior, Marco joined the other cadets and headed toward the garrison HQ. Over the last 2 years, there was hardly anyone who hadn't fallen victim to Kato's pranks or tricks, and the way his mind worked always seemed bizarre. Nevertheless, Marco found himself unconsciously gravitating toward Jean. Well, somebody is not gonna die a poor death at least. Mikasa blazed through the war-torn streets, her movements a deadly dance as she dispatched one Titan after another with inhuman accuracy. Kaito followed in her wake, leaping through the buildings with a silent grace that matched her prowess. Her fuel won't last for more than 2 minutes, Kaito muttered to himself, keeping a close eye on her as she continued her relentless assault. As if foretelling the inevitable, just moments later, Mikasa's gas supply ran dry. With a swift, precise kill, she aimed her ODM gear at the wall, but nothing happened. She was out of options. Her eyes showed no surprise, and she didn't attempt to save herself from the impending fall. Timing it perfectly, Kaito launched himself into her trajectory, meeting her in midair. In that fleeting moment, their eyes locked. The blank expression on Mikasa's face tugged at Kato's heartstrings. The sun hung behind Kaito, casting a halo around him as they descended. A shower of Titan blood erupted from the one she had just slain, painting a vivid, almost picturesque scene. His strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her close to his chest. True to her Ackerman lineage, Mikasa reacted with lightning speed, struggling to free herself from his grip. However, Kato's supernatural strength easily subdued her efforts, leaving her with no choice but to remain in his embrace. Kato's body crashed through a window, shattering the glass as they both tumbled inside a building. Just according to Kikaku. His gaze met hers, and for a moment, they were suspended in time, the chaos of battle momentarily forgotten. Here is the second dose of today, have fun. And thanks to Tetsuga03, Jasham, Dark_Night01 and Little Baron for their reviews, especially Tetsuga03 for his active engagement with multitude of comments in the story. You guys might not believe it, but it's really fun to read the reader's reaction and thoughts about the story. So keep those comments coming. And we are just one review away from touching 10. Do it guys. 4 comments 0 vote. A step closer. Timing it perfectly, Kaito launched himself into her trajectory, meeting her in midair. In that fleeting moment, their eyes locked. The sun hung behind Kaito, casting a halo around him as they descended. A shower of Titan blood erupted from the one she had just slain, painting a vivid, almost picturesque scene. His strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her close to his chest. True to her Ackerman lineage, Mikasa reacted with lightning speed, struggling to free herself from his grip. However, Kato's supernatural strength easily subdued her efforts, leaving her with no choice but to remain in his embrace. Kato's body crashed through a window, shattering the glass as they both tumbled inside a building. It was all part of his calculated plan. His gaze met hers, and momentarily, they were suspended in time, the chaos of battle momentarily forgotten. Let go. Mikasa muttered, her voice quivering as she attempted to maintain her usual stoic facade. She pushed against Kato's arms, her muscles straining and her eyes defiant. Her voice, although strained, held an edge of anger. Kato's grip remained unwavering, but he didn't just restrain her physically. He spoke softly, almost whispering, "Mikasa, you don't have to be strong all the time. It's okay to feel pain and sadness. Let me go, damn it." Mikasa's voice cracked as she yelled. But Kaito didn't give in. He knew that sometimes, the only way to heal was to confront the pain head on. He held her closer, whispering softly, "Mikasa, it's all right. You can cry. I'm here for you." Mikasa's defenses began to crack, her once fierce resistance now turning into a tremor of vulnerability. She bit her lip, holding back the emotions that threatened to spill over. Her resistance began to wane, and her voice quivered. "I don't need your help. I can handle this on my own." Kaito's voice was soothing as he replied, "I know you can, Mikasa, but you don't have to." He could see her defenses slowly breaking down. "It's okay to be vulnerable." "No, I can't," Mikasa managed to utter between strained breaths. Her voice wavered, and she closed her eyes tightly, as if trying to deny the tears that were welling up. Mikasa's struggles weakened, and the facade of emotionlessness began to crumble. A few tears escaped, tracing down her cheeks. She bit her lip, fighting against the tide of emotions threatening to drown her. But Kaito's unwavering support, understanding, and empathy made it increasingly difficult for her to keep up the pretense. Mikasa's struggles became feeble, and her resistance seemed to diminish with every passing moment. She looked up at Kaito, her eyes filled with sorrow, and she finally allowed herself to speak the words that had been buried deep within her. "Eren. He is gone. He is really gone." Kaito held her close, offering his presence as a solace. Mikasa's tears flowed freely now, her sobs racking her body as she buried her face in Kaito's chest. He continued to hold her, letting her release the pent-up pain and sorrow she had carried. After some time, she lifted her head and looked into Kaito's eyes, her own still glistening with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse but filled with gratitude. Kaito smiled warmly, a reassuring presence in her darkest moments. "You're welcome, but I have to say, you really soaked my clothes." Mikasa felt her cheeks heat up as she realized her proximity to Kaito. She was sitting on his lap while her whole body practically clung to him and her hands lying on his chest. She quickly disentangled herself from him, standing up and brushing off her uniform. Kaito followed suit, dusting his clothes and paying no mind to the small tears in his uniform caused by the shattered window. Luckily, Mikasa had not noticed his unblemished skin, or that would have been quite hectic to answer. "We should mow. Arggggggggg." Kaito's voice was cut off by an extremely loud roar that resounded through the entire surroundings. It wasn't a sound that anyone could ignore, and its ominous tone sent shivers down their spines. "What was that?" Mikasa appeared taken aback by the deafening roar. Kaito didn't seem fazed. "Who knows? Let's leave before we get swarmed by titans," he suggested, pushing aside the unnerving sound. However, something felt amiss to Kaito. The situation didn't quite align with what he knew from his previous experiences. The abnormal titan, which should have been here, was now somewhere far away, roaring in the distance. It was a stark reminder of how the future could change, influenced by various factors, including the number and positions of titans. Future changes, very understandable, Kaito thought to himself. The appearance of the abnormal titan was highly dependent on the intricate interplay of titans in the city, and it seemed that the circumstances had evolved differently from what he had anticipated. The blank expression on Mikasa's face, Mikasa's voice brought him back to the present. "I can't go. My gas cylinder is empty," she said with resignation. "You should go." Kaito found her response reminiscent of Carla, Eren's mother, and that struck a chord with him. "You know what? Just hop on," Kaito suggested with a mischievous glint in his eyes. Hop on? What do you mean?" Mikasa questioned, her eyebrows furrowed in confusion. Kaito pointed to his back, indicating a piggyback ride. "I can carry you. It's faster, and we can conserve your gas. Trust me. I've done this before." Mikasa's expression shifted from uncertainty to reluctance. The idea of such close contact with Kaito made her uncomfortable. "I can manage on my own. I don't need your help." Kaito chuckled. "Come on, Mikasa. We need to get out of here quickly. I promise I won't bite." She eyed him skeptically, the weight of recent events and the loss of Eren making her hesitant. "I'm not sure about this." Kaito chuckled. "Come on, Mikasa. We don't have time for pride. It's either this or risk getting caught by Titans. Your choice. I promise I won't bite. Mikasa glared at him for a moment, then sighed in reluctant agreement. Fine, but don't get any funny ideas. Great choice, Kaito grinned. Hop on, and let's show these Titans what real speed looks like. Mikasa sighed, just until we find a working ODM gear. Scout's honor, Kaito replied, holding his hand over his heart in a mock serious gesture. He knelt down, allowing Mikasa to climb onto his back. As Mikasa reluctantly hopped on, Kaito couldn't help but smirk. See? Not so bad, right? Let's just go, Mikasa muttered, a faint blush tinting her cheeks. As Mikasa reluctantly hopped on Kaito's back, the proximity triggered an unsettling mix of discomfort and emotions within her. Her heart still ached from the recent loss of Eren, and the wounds were too fresh for her to accept comfort or closeness easily. Kaito started moving through the desolate streets, and with every step, Mikasa clung tighter to his back, as if the physical closeness could offer some solace to her shattered emotions. You okay back there? Kaito asked, trying to break the tension. He felt the tension in her body and knew she was far from okay. Mikasa took a deep breath before responding, her voice almost a whisper. Yeah, I'm fine. But Kaito could sense the lie. He adjusted his pace, slowing down, giving her a moment to collect herself. The weight of loss pressed heavily on Mikasa's shoulders, and Kaito understood that sometimes, silence was the only solace in such moments. The wind carried the faint scent of blood and despair, a stark reminder of the brutality they had witnessed. Mikasa's usually stoic demeanor cracked for a moment, and a heavy sigh escaped her lips. Kaito could feel the weight of her sorrow pressing against him. Even if he knew the truth, he couldn't help but feel empathy for her. Kaito really wondered how one moment he lived in a state of utter apathy, and at others, he found himself shaken by their mere emotions. The world around them seemed to blur, and the only constants were the rhythmic voice of wires zipping and the uneven breaths shared between them. What's up, guys? How have you been? Here's another chapter. Thanks to all the reader for reading till now, and special thanks to _Pochitalover_ for his review. I really appreciate when you guys talk about this story and all. Stay safe, stay happy. 3 comments 0 vote. Omnious battles. Hey, Mick, look there, Kaito said. Some of the cadets were again standing on a roof, engaged in a heated discussion. As Kaito and Mikasa ascended, the others, including Armin, turned to witness the unexpected sight of Mikasa clinging to Kaito's back. Murmurs of surprise and curiosity rippled through the group. Armin, despite the turmoil in his own emotions, felt a pang of indignation. He couldn't help but wonder why Mikasa would choose such a vulnerable position so soon after Eren's apparent demise. Mikasa, sensing the unspoken judgment, unclasped her hands from Kaito and stepped forward, her expression impassive but her eyes carrying the weight of her recent losses. Armin, unable to contain his thoughts, blurted out, Mikasa, after Eren. I mean, is this really the time? Mikasa's gaze turned cold for a moment. Armin, not now. Kaito saved my life, and I had no gas left. I'm not clinging to him for comfort but for survival. Armin, realizing his mistake, stammered an apology. I'm sorry, Mikasa. I didn't mean to assume. It's been rough for everyone. Mikasa's expression softened slightly, and she nodded in acknowledgement. Ignoring the blonde crybaby, Kaito looked toward Jean and another cadet, whose name wasn't that important. Why are you guys standing here? Jean irritably said, Shorty here doesn't want to fight the Titans. Pointing toward the brown-haired guy whose face was full of snot and tears. Gee guys. Connie suddenly cried. Startled, the cadets turned their attention toward Connie. He pointed in the distance. Look over there. Following his finger, their eyes widened in disbelief. In the distance, amidst the crumbling city and roaming Titans, a colossal 15-meter Titan engaged in an inexplicable battle against its own kind. The surreal scene left the group bewildered, their expressions a mix of surprise, confusion, and a hint of hope. The cadets exchanged puzzled glances, their expressions ranging from bewilderment to surprise, leaving them thoroughly confused. Is that Titans fighting each other? One cadet stammered, echoing the disbelief that hung in the air. What in the world? Sasha muttered, her eyes fixed on the spectacle. Is it an abnormal? Armin asked in wonderment. Kaito discreetly observed the faces of the three Marleyan warriors. Unlike the cadets, surprise marked their expressions, but the source of their astonishment differed. Bertholdt's gaze shifted between Annie and Reiner, both fixed on the abnormal Titan engaged in combat with its kin. A singular question lingered in their minds. Could that be the coordinate? It doesn't matter, abnormal or not, Jean asserted. It could even be beneficial for us. Let it fight other Titans over at HQ, and we might just make it out alive. But how will we do that? Sasha inquired. Jean pointed toward the Titan in question. See how it's just mindlessly fighting the nearest Titan. Connie, as if struck by sudden enlightenment, exclaimed, we just have to kill the Titans around it, and it will naturally head to HQ. The prospect seemed a more promising alternative than facing the multitude of Titans surrounding the HQ. Fueled by newfound enthusiasm, the cadets dispersed once again, their objective clear. Armin, feeling like a burden in the midst of the chaos, offered his gas canister to her. Here, take this. I might not be much help right now, and you need it more. Mikasa hesitated for a moment, torn between accepting Armin's offer and not wanting her friends to bear unnecessary risks. She shook her head, declining. Armin, keep it. You might need it. Armin, determined to contribute, insisted, I'll be fine. I can manage with what's left in my ODM gear. You will make a better use of this than me anyways. Reluctantly, Mikasa accepted the canister, her gratitude evident in her eyes. Thanks, Armin. Stay safe. Sasha, Krista, and Ymir, on me, Kaito commanded. Ymir shot him a skeptical look, but Kaito couldn't care less about her opinion. Relying on fate to keep them alive, especially with the recent increase in Titan population, seemed like a questionable strategy. The designated trio of girls nodded. Setting aside other considerations, Kaito had demonstrated his skills in various tests, making their survival odds marginally better with him, hopefully. After all, the words, definitely, and Kaito, rarely belonged in the same sentence. However, Sasha couldn't resist teasing him, calling just girls. You making a harem or something? Kaito responded with a sly wink, opting not to dignify her remark with a verbal reply. Meanwhile, as Mikasa prepared to rejoin the battle with her now filled ODM, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Don't go recklessly wasting gas this time, and more importantly, your life, a voice advised. I wasn't. Mikasa retorted without looking back, swiftly launching herself with the ODM gear's hook. Kaito merely shook his head in amusement. Let's go, girls. He declared, leaping from the roof and rejoining the unfolding drama. Kaito zipped through the air with remarkable agility, effortlessly maneuvering through the chaotic battleground. Sasha, Krista, and Ymir followed suit, showcasing their own combat prowess as they swiftly dispatched Titans in their path. The air was filled with the whirring sounds of ODM gear and occasional roars of Titans. As they fought, Kaito couldn't help but notice a change in the Titans' behavior. They seemed to be getting faster and more focused, particularly on him. Several times, he narrowly dodged their lunges, feeling the rush of air as massive limbs swiped through the space he had occupied a moment before. Kaito's instincts told him that something was off. The Titans were exhibiting a level of coordination and aggression that went beyond the usual mindless behavior. He glanced at Sasha, Krista, and Ymir and saw that they, too, were facing the heightened challenge, albeit to a lesser degree. In the midst of the battle, Sasha shouted, "Why are they so fast all of a sudden?" Krista, grappling with a Titan, replied, "I don't know, but we need to adapt quickly." Ymir, engaged in combat nearby, added, "Stay sharp, everyone. Something's not right." While the others vocalized their confusion, Kaito remained silent, carefully observing the escalating situation. Dodging a swipe from the Titan's colossal hand, Kaito propelled himself backward, attaching his hooks to a nearby rooftop. With a powerful swing, he launched himself toward the Titan's neck, blades glinting in the sunlight. In a seamless motion, he severed the nape, sending the Titan crashing to the ground. A sense of unease settled over him, but he kept his focus on the fight, dispatching Titans with calculated precision. Something is fucking wrong with these fucking Titans. Kaito grunted as he gracefully evaded yet another swipe from a menacing 15-meter giant. They had been killing Titans for the last 30 minutes, and with each passing second, the Titans he fought seemed to grow faster and faster, and for fuck's sake, it wasn't easy for him anymore. Embedding his blade into the Titan's hand, Kaito seized the opportunity to launch himself into the air as the creature attempted to fling him away. During that fleeting moment of ascent, he surveyed the battlefield. Sasha, Krista, and Ymir were entangled in combat with another 15-meter Titan, a ballet of death, as they exhibited their skills in a synchronized dance. As gravity took hold of his body, Kaito descended. With his additional momentum, he aimed his ODM gear at the Titan's shoulder. Unaware of the impending threat, the Titan opened its maw wide, anticipating a bloody feast. However, Kaito's trajectory shifted slightly due to the ODM gear, and he passed by its face, leaving his sword to slice through its cheek muscles, splitting its jaw apart before meeting the resistance of bone. As the sword came to a dramatic halt, Kaito's body tried to strike a pose, his foot landing with what he hoped looked like superhero flair on the Titan's back. Swiftly, his second sword executed a precise strike, severing the nape. Finally fucking dead, Kaito sighed in mock relief, his vampire endurance doing its job, kind of. I mean, he wasn't exactly the grand poobah of vampires, blessed with unlimited strength and endurance. His vampiric bloodline, as far as he could tell, was more on the grunt level, nothing too flashy. But hey, who needed to be Dracula when you had near Captain America level strength, a Wolverine-like healing factor, and the senses of a feral detective? Not Kaito, that's for sure. And complaints? Nah, those were for mortals. And it wasn't like he was restricted to that strength, he could overclock his body to slam Titans like plushies, not exactly plushies, but you get the gist. In a momentary lapse, Kaito failed to anticipate the gigantic hand of the Titan he had just defeated hurtling toward him. Despite managing to jump back and avoid the full impact, the giant hand still struck him, sending his body hurtling toward a nearby building. Upon impact, his body collided with the wall, and the force ruptured his skin at various places, blood spurting out in a disconcerting manner. Like a character in a cartoon, his body slid down the wall, leaving a trail of crimson behind. Yo guys! Here's today's DOEE of chapter. My update schedule is a bit irregular these days, and unfortunately will continue to be so for the rest of this month, so sorry for that. Otherwise, enjoy the chapter. Like it. Add to library. Have some idea about my story. Comment it and let me know. NightSpectra_tot creators thoughts. 6 comments 0 vote. Reckoning. Sasha and Ymir joined the scene, relief visible on Sasha's face as she saw Kaito standing seemingly unharmed. In moments like these, Kaito appreciated the vampiric ability to absorb blood, hiding any external injuries. Sasha. Kaito greeted with a smirk. Looks like we're all in one piece. Sasha, however, was still concerned. Are you okay, Kaito? I saw that Titan throw you away. That was pretty intense. Kaito flexed his muscles nonchalantly. I'm fine, Sasha. Not a scratch. Titans can't beat me that easily. Krista, who had been observing quietly, seemed about to say something, but Kaito winked at her, and she remained silent. Sasha squinted her eyes, not entirely convinced. Thrown by a Titan and not a scratch? That's hard to believe. How did it even hit you? Kaito shrugged, feigning ignorance. I'm not sure. It caught me off guard, but I managed to kill my momentum in midair. No harm done. Sasha frowned, still uneasy about the situation. It doesn't add up. You cut the Titan's nape, right? It should have died instantly. Kaito sighed, placing a hand on Sasha's shoulder. Look, thinking about it now won't get us anywhere. We need to focus on the battlefield. We can figure out the Titan's weird behavior later. For now, let's keep moving. Sasha reluctantly nodded, the mystery of the Titan's resilience lingering in the back of their minds. The cadets' numbers diminished, but their unbroken determination surveyed the aftermath of their hard-fought battle. The cost had been high and lives were lost in the struggle to secure a fleeting victory. The abnormal Titan, now that its vicinity was clear of any other Titans, set its sights on the HQ where the swarm of Titans was roaming about. In the distance, the remaining cadets emerged, trailing behind the raging abnormal. The tension hung thick in the air as the cadets exchanged weary glances, a shared acknowledgement of the challenges they faced. As the abnormal approached the HQ, a fierce clash ensued. Its fists blazed like infernos, striking against the swarm of titans as if its very punches were aflame. Connie's voice cut through the tension, "We have a chance." Jean seized the moment, his declaration echoing in the midst of the battlefield. "Now. This is our moment," he proclaimed with conviction. The cadets, a determined but dwindling group, rallied for a final sprint toward their destination. The HQ, a beacon of hope in the midst of chaos, awaited their arrival. The cadets surged forward, their collective resolve driving them forward against the odds. The abnormal titan, a fiery force in the chaotic dance of battle, engaged the mindless titans, allowing the cadets a small chance to pass through. The cadets pushed themselves to the limit, hoping that this desperate sprint would be the key to turning the tide in their favor. But then it happened. The sky crackled as a sudden stillness engulfed the atmosphere. A tense atmosphere hangs in the air as the ominous miasma creeps through the ground, casting an otherworldly shadow across the once clear sky. The blackish red lightning, like a sinister omen, tears through the heavens, leaving an unspoken dread in its wake. A flash of black lightning fell from the sky into the cloud of miasma. Kaito, attuned to the supernatural currents, senses an impending catastrophe. A shiver, both eerie and foreboding, races through his being. It's a warning, a call to action that cannot be ignored. He could feel this, whatever it was. It was his reckoning, the hunter sent for him. "Guys, go now." Kaito pierces the silence with a voice echoing urgency, urging his fellow cadets to flee. Panic ensues as they scramble toward the supposed safety of HQ. But amid the valley of buildings, where the miasma had concentrated, a grotesque anomaly emerged. Yet, Kaito, usually nimble and decisive, finds himself inexplicably immobilized. His pleas to his body to move went unanswered, and the ground quivered beneath him, building anticipation until an abrupt silence descended. Summoning every ounce of strength, Kaito turns to witness the impending horror. His widened eyes reflect the imminent catastrophe, and as the cadets brace themselves, the unknown threat lingers, a chilling prelude to an unimaginable event. A titan, but unlike anyone has seen till now. Its grotesque face, a skin with red and black veins bulging and pulsing, and the whole body adorned with numerous spiky crystal protrusions, painted a nightmarish sight. The black miasma that was oozing out of it wasn't helping much to the viewer's horror. And if that wasn't enough, one of its hands was larger than the other, and the fingers grotesquely mutated in ghastly claws. Gasps and shouts filled the air as the cadets registered the seismic shift in the battlefield. "What in the world?" Connie muttered, his voice barely audible over the tumultuous scene. In the blink of an eye, chaos takes on a whole new meaning. The abnormal titan, which was fighting other titans till now, locked his eyes on the unknown titan like a predator homing in on its prey. There's a sickening certainty in its movements, a primal instinct steering it toward this newfound horror. The cadets, frozen in awe and terror, watch as the abnormal titan charges headlong into the unknown titan's direction. It's like watching a train wreck unfold in slow motion, the suspense hanging heavy in the air. But then, with a swipe that could make even the bravest flinch, the Crimson Titan asserts its dominance. Claws meet flesh, and in one brutal motion, the abnormal titan is rendered obsolete. It's as if reality itself can't keep up with the scene's brutality. In the aftermath of its powerful slash, the abnormal titan, once a menacing force, crashed into a building with a thunderous impact. The cadets, caught in a moment of stunned silence, quickly snapped back to reality. One of its hands was missing, and a giant incision marred the rest of its body, sending it temporarily out of commission. "Sorry guys, I am a bit late. Here is the chapter I promised. And once again, thanks for bearing with me." NightSpectra_tot creators thoughts. 7 comments 0 vote. The Claw. Silence descends on the battleground, broken only by the ominous hum of the Claw Titan, named after its nefarious clawed hand and black mist surrounding its body. Meanwhile the cadets, still processing the gruesome spectacle, exchange wide-eyed glances. This is beyond the realm of their training, the unknown stretching out before them like a shadowy abyss. Jean's eyes narrowed, his gaze fixed on the colossal titan. "What the hell is that thing?" Mikasa, always vigilant, tightened her grip on her gear. "No time for questions, we need to." Her voice was cut off as she felt a hand on her shoulder. With urgency in his tone, Kaito said with a soft voice, "You guys go," directing Sasha and the others to sprint toward the safety of the HQ, "I will distract it for some time." However, Krista, ever the voice of reason and concern, tries to protest, her words hanging in the air. But Kaito doesn't entertain any debate. We don't have time, we can't let this roam freely, he said with an unrefusable tone, the force of his command cutting through the chaos like a blade. His vampiric instincts, heightened by the unfolding events, leave no room for hesitation. The urgency in his voice resonated with the gravity of the situation, and some of the cadets looked at each other for a moment and, fueled by a mix of fear and determination, restarted their run, weaving through the looming swarm of Titans. Kaito was about to head in the incoming Titan's direction when he was blocked by the black-haired girl standing in front of him. Kaito, you go with others, I will do it, Mikasa said, looking at the monstrous Titan with a fearless gaze. She had already lost Eren, the one she had promised to protect, her last family member. If her life could provide others a chance. Her brown eyes met Kaito's. He had a small smile on his face. I can handle it, Mick, others need you more now. You, her voice faded off as she felt Kaito's grip on her shoulder tighten a bit. Please. Okay. Before leaving, Mikasa's eyes met his, a look of concern apparent. That does put a smile on my face, he thought. With the cadets gone, he refaced the creature. At last, as everybody left, Kaito took a deep breath to calm his mind as survival instincts were screaming at him like a rock concert in his head. Nothing in the script had prepared him for this Titan, a monstrosity that seems to have taken a detour from the pages of simple, ugly, deformed, still human-looking Titans. With a breath that feels more like a gulp, he settles a million questions swirling in his mind. Survival first, existential crises later. One thing was sure, that this thing was nowhere present in official story, and its presence here was directly an attribute of him. The Claw Titan stood motionless. Its eyes are hidden in darkness, but Kaito could feel its unnerving gaze on himself. The other Titans, bizarrely enough, are ignoring it, and that was weird. Kaito's no Titan expert, but even he knows that in the wild world of Titans, leaving aside the founding Titan, the rest of the mindless Titan gang never spares the other 9 Titans. The Titan moved, its big legs taking slow steps toward Kaito. Kaito jumped to a different building, but the Titan changed its path to again head in his direction. No escaping, Let's see what you got, bastard, Kaito mumbled. In a daring move, Kaito faced the red Titan head on. He intercepted the spiky hand hurtling towards him with a flash of his blade. The clash of steel against monstrous force echoed through the chaos. Despite his vampiric abilities, Kaito strained against the relentless power of the red Titan. Hardened skin. The moment his saber struck its skin, the unreal toughness became apparent. As it was designed for, the blade quickly broke off, allowing Kaito to quickly reposition himself out of its path. Landing on top of a church building, Kaito stared at the menacing Titan. On the corner of his eyes, he saw the cadets zip-lining through the swarm of Titans. Some had reached inside the building while some were on their way. 1,000 questions were running in his mind regarding this Titan, but he sidelined irrelevant ones and focused on the combat. The skin is crystallized, but it's not natural like that of armored Titan, it's more like female Titan hardening, just more wild and more stronger. He switched the blade of his saber and jumped toward it again. The Claw Titan finally moved earnestly, its claw slicing through the air, a crimson streak aimed at Kaito. He dodges with a dancer's grace, his body twisting and turning to dodge several attacks while fruitlessly trying to damage it back. Its numerous protrusions served as a natural barrier to attack its nape directly, not that his blade would be able to pierce its hide anyway. Switching his tactic, he began attacking its joints, but it was also useless, as unlike armored Titan's armor, which were external plate-like thing, this thing seemed to build out of crystal itself. Fucking hell, the Titan suddenly did something unexpected, accelerating at the last moment. Kaito, unable to fully evade, felt the searing pain as one of its claws graze across his back, leaving a long gash in its wake. A grunt escaped his lips, as he clenched his teeth against the agony. Wounds were no new thing to him, but for whatever reason, the current one hurt like a bitch. Blood leaked without rest from his wound as he backed away a bit and waited for the wound to heal. In some seconds, flesh knitted together in a gritty display of vampiric regeneration. The Titan's defense was already a bitch to deal with, but at least earlier he could dodge the attacks. But now, Kaito was barely saving his head or any other part from leaving his body. The abnormal Titan, now awake, had its hands full with other mindless Titans. It was trying to move toward the Claw Titan, but other Titans had already began attacking and eating its body. It was resisting fiercely, but each attack left it more injured than before. Fortunately, most cadets had sought refuge in the HQ. Kaito, refocused on his immediate threat, found himself in a tight spot as the Claw Titan charged towards him again from behind. The colossal hand slammed where Kaito had stood, sending shockwaves rippling in every direction. A narrow escape led him into a nearby building, avoiding a gruesome fate of becoming a blood spatter. No fat chance I am gonna fight this darn creature now, Kaito resolved, opting for a strategic retreat. But a deafening boom echoed through the air before he could take another step. The walls crumbled, revealing the misshapen face of the Red Titan peering through. Its malevolent eyes, resembling vortexes of evil, locked onto Kaito. Time hung suspended for a moment, a silent exchange of intent. The first to break the stillness was Kaito, his hands armed with the remaining blade striking towards the eyes. He was mere meters away when the world blurred, and a sudden sense of weightlessness engulfed his body. The ground rushed up to meet him as his body crashed into it, skidding for several meters. Time resumed, and Kaito spat a mouthful of blood, the rest trailing down his face. A searing pain enveloped his senses. Slowly shifting his gaze toward the source of agony, Kaito realized something was missing, or more accurately, wasn't there anymore. His whole left side was mangled, his left hand completely absent. The gravity of the situation hit him, a cocktail of shock, pain, and realization flooding his mind. Sorry guys, but I won't be able to churn out chapters daily as I am getting busy with college affairs and all. The new update schedule will be twice per week. I have also uploaded the Claw Titan illustration on previous chapters comment box as well as in auxiliary chapter. Creation is hard, cheer me up. NightSpectra _ taught creators thoughts.